Hey, hello to you. It's so great to see you and I hope I find you well. You might have noticed that we're not actually up in Weir Yard, nor are we in the garden. We're actually down here in the library, and if you think that sounds posh, well, don't be swayed by that. It's not as posh as it really seems. But the reason for this is because we are reviewing today the biggest locomotive that we have ever had on this channel for review. Now you might remember that we've followed over the last few years the development of the Ellis Clark train's Black 5 in O gauge. And we've seen this come together with some of the EP samples, as well as the decorated samples and some of the select parts as they've been doing test fits and seeing how all of the parts are going to be going together in the factory. It's been a long time coming, but I'm really excited to see that the Black 5 and all the different versions have finally reached the market, following hot on the heels of the Wickham rail trolley and also those press flow cement wagons. This has definitely been one of the most eagerly anticipated models of 2024, and it's finally arrived. And I'd like to really thank Ellis Clark for arranging to loan an example to the channel so that we could get a good close look. So I'm really looking forward to seeing whether this lives up to all of the expectations that we've had over the last 4 years of development. It's also going to be interesting to see Ellis Clark Train's first steam locomotive, given that we're waiting for their War Department 210 in 00 as well, and that's certainly going to be one heck of a model if this lives up to even half of the expectations that we have for it. So come with me and let's take a good close look. Today's video comes in association with Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest loco.
The first thing that strikes you is that this is very much a unit of a model. It comes in this massive, very durable box with line art on the top for the fine scale O gauge Black 5. This particular model is E1005AS, and that is the Black 5 in its late BR lined livery as number 45337 with the welded tender, and this also includes the full DCC sound. The model is also being made available in a number of other different detail variances and different livery options too, including LMS, BR late and early, and there's also a host of unnumbered examples to aid the modeller in producing the exact version that they want for their fleet. The first thing that strikes me is that this is really, really heavy. I'm just trying to slide the lid off, and there's actually quite a vacuum on this, so just bear with me a moment, talk amongst yourselves. One thing I really like about the box is the side flap folds down to give us much better access to get the model out. We've got some information on DCC installation, a lovely thank you card, and a nice postcard too. For this particular model, these are really quite useful. We've got the full list of DCC sound functions. There's a lot of solid foam in here protecting the model. Once we get down inside, there's a number of detailing parts. If you don't want to be running your model down to radius 2 curves, which is 40.5 inches, then you're able to add some of these extra parts to enhance the look of your model and make it more prototypically accurate. There's also additional piping as well, and also some tools for being able to get the model out of the packaging. It's held on with 4 screws, And Ellis Clark thoughtfully gives you the tool to get it out, so there's no scrabbling around thinking, I haven't got anything to get this out of the box. Inside the packaging, we've got this lovely plinth, and it's actually been designed with display of the model in mind. It needs this plinth for protection in transit, and it's held on by 4 screws underneath, and that's what we'll use the Allen keys for. Once they're undone, it's simply a case of lifting the model out. Out of the box, the tender and the locomotive are not actually joined up. And for the first part of this review, I'm going to leave them separate because it makes it just a little bit easier to talk about the 2 separate parts. Looking to the front, the face of the Black 5 is captured perfectly. It's one of the things that Ellis Clark trains don't do by halves, is their research. And a lot of work has gone into making sure that this Black 5 is exactly like the full-size prototypes. We've got sprung buffers, and in O-gauge sprung buffers are very necessary, and it's nice to feel that there's a good amount of spring on these, and certainly when we get it on the Garden Railway it'll be great to see just how well these work. Factory fitted, we've got the drawbar hook and the coupling, and this is all fully functional, and you're going to need this at this scale because that's just how these models couple together. The vacuum standard is factory fitted, and you can see the curve of the frame all really well captured. It's quite a complex curve here. It goes in flat, curves and straight up, and that's all captured perfectly well. The rest of the running board sticks out slightly further, as it should, and then the main frames themselves are captured with the compound curve at the end, again as they should. One of the things I really like about this is that the full smoke box is in a more matte finish, and this really does look really good when viewed from any angle. Just like the real Black 5s, or indeed any steam locomotive, these will be painted with a heat-resistant paint because they will be subjected to much higher temperatures, and this always tends to have a much more matte finish, and Ellis Clark trains have captured this perfectly. We've got lamps factory fitted on the front, and a whole multitude of separately fitted parts. The mind boggles when you try and count these because there are just so many, and you keep finding more. We've also got an opening smokebox door, and this gives us full access inside for the speaker, and you can also see the wiring to the front directionally controlled lamp. The lamps on these are really nicely done. We've even got the correctly finished domed glass front, just like the prototypes. And the fact that they work as well is something that we don't really usually see on a steam locomotive, and it's great to see. It's one less thing for the modeller to have to think about adding if they want to go down that route. By default, on DCC, they're switched off, but with the sound fitted function that the factory fitted sound comes with, these can be turned on F20, and they will automatically change round depending on the direction that the locomotive is travelling in. Moving the locomotive onto its side, I want to show off the front bogie. This again has brass bearings and is centrally sprung. It's again quite a complex part. There's a lot of metal components in this, and the wheels too are perfect. We've got the correct number of spokes, and they're correctly dished on the front face. And I really like as well how the actual angles between the rim and the spokes is captured. We've got guard irons fitted as standard, and the locomotive out of the box will go around the radius 2 curves. This includes set track points and curves, and is approximately 40.5 inches. The cylinders have a cutaway at the back to facilitate this, but in the extra detail bag we've actually got parts that slot in here, and there's detailed instructions showing you exactly how to do this. Looking further underneath, the full frame is modelled with the correct cutaways for the bogie wheels, and in the extra detail bag we've also got some drain cock pipes too. Again, these can only be fitted if you're not running this locomotive down to its minimum radius. All the brake rigging is factory fitted. It's really quite fine, but nice and robust. We've got sanding pipes on here. These are made of metal. We've also got the correct spring pattern, and there's even pipes right up inside. You wouldn't normally see any of this unless you had the locomotive on its side like this, but it's really nice to know that it's there. It just shows the level of attention of detail that Ellis Clark trains have gone to. Further back, the pipes are correctly joggled, following the curve back, all the brake stretchers and rigging, and the springs all the way back. Underneath the cab, we've got all of this nice pipe work, and then we've also got the connector that connects between the tender and locomotive electrically. And then we've actually got a drawbar on the back here, which is just like the real locomotive. On the running plate, it's really nice to see the wealth of detail. It is literally rivet perfect, and I defy anybody to find a rivet that's out of place. I also really like all of this extra detail here. I think this is the lubricator mechanism, and it's actually a joy to see even the smallest of these pipes, which on the real locomotive I guess would be made of copper, is perfectly formed, and you can actually pick out the individual pipes just in front of the lubricator mechanism. It's a little bit difficult to see, but there's actually a space all the way underneath the boiler. The boiler does sit a little bit low on the Black 5, so there's no obvious air gap, but there is a gap there, just like on the real locomotive. There's lots and lots of extra detail underneath here, and they're all separately fitted parts. It really is magic to see. We've got quite subtle lining, just as per the prototype, with the twin red lines, and these are straight and true, and really sharply applied. I also really like the overhead warning flash stickers on this. We've got one just at the very back of the boiler, and then we've got another here on the top of the firebox. And these again really crisp and sharp, and an absolute joy to see just how detailed these are. The pipework on the side of the boiler is all metal, and it's actually incredibly robust. On a 00 gauge model, sometimes you're a little bit wary about handling some of this pipework. They can have a habit of just breaking off if you're not careful, but there's no feeling of that with this. It just feels incredibly strong and durable. And everything about this model says strong and durable. It does feel like there's a very, very thoughtful process gone into what to make every single part out of. It doesn't actually feel like there's much in the way of plastic on this. Instead, there's a lot of die cast and brass parts. I've just seen the works plate down here, next to that overhead warning flash symbol, and the detail on this, everything is legible where it should be, and perfect. Looking along the top of the locomotive, you can see we've got the correctly shaped funnel with its lip, and it goes right down and into there. In fact, it feels like there's a lot of space inside this model, and I wouldn't be surprised if there is space in here deliberately left for anybody who wants to fit a smoke unit. Certainly, I can't imagine it being a difficult proposition to do that. Looking further along the boiler, the actual tapered feel of the boiler is captured perfectly. This was very much a Stanier thing, and it started out narrow where the smoke box is, and then gradually gets a little bit wider as it goes back towards the firebox. And this, again, it's all complex shapes that have been captured perfectly. This isn't just a standard tube. This is definitely something that takes an awful lot of work to get the angles, the curves, and everything just right. The front of the firebox as well, we've got this curved and then tapered look just like the real thing, and then we've got turned metal safety valves on the top with their housing. Again, rivet perfect. We've even got the line down the middle where the cladding parts would bolt together. It's not a mould parting, that is exactly as per the prototype. And then on the front we've got the whistle sticking out the front of the cab. This is a metal item. I'm tapping that with a screwdriver and there's no movement. This is not a plastic part. Everything on this appears to be made of various different types of metal, chosen for how well they replicate the full-sized parts. The cab roof too, we've got this, again, a complex compound curve coming up fast and then shallowing off, almost flat across the top, and then the same down and round the other side. The lines of the rivets with their alternate rivets on, it's all captured perfectly. Everything about this is just perfect. It doesn't feel like a mass-produced model. What it actually feels like is something that a craftsman has sat down and laboured over, a labour of love. It really does feel like a unique, bespoke model, and I can imagine every single one of these coming out of the box will feel exactly the same. These very much are exquisite works of art. The hatch on the top of the roof, it feels like it should slide, but I don't want to force it. I am mindful that this is on loan, but it does feel like it might be actually posable, but if it is, it's quite stiff, so I'm going to leave that be, because I think it's a case of you break it, you bought it. Looking to the side of the cab, we've got flush fitted glazing in the windows, and the lining too is really quite exquisite. Here we've got red and the cream separated by the black, and the number 45337 across the centre is really crisp and sharp. Should be said as well that Ellis Clark Trains have just announced at Model Rail Scotland at the time of filming this that there are 2 custom renumbered versions being made available, and these add to the versions that are available out of the box from Ellis Clark Trains. Looking further down, the running plate, you can see we've got the lining with the cream, and the red follows that really lovely and also accentuates the curve of the frame as it drops down for the foot plate. I really like these steps. One thing about them is they've even got the tread on them, the non-slip. They're made of some kind of metal, just like everything else on this model, and feel nice and robust. Turning the model round so we can see inside the cab, the one word which immediately springs to mind is wow. There is so much going on in here. Everything on the back head is perfectly picked out, and I mean everything. Anybody familiar with a real Black 5 would look in here and recognise everything, and everything has a place and a place for everything. F0 on DCC activates the firebox flicker, and that opens up the use of F6 for coal shoveling. The fall plate between tender and locomotive is hinged. The valve wheels are all separately applied and correctly finished, with their 4-spoke arrangement and the protrusion at one side for grip. They really do look the part. And all of the gauges, just as you would expect, are correctly lettered and numbered out, with needles that make these look like they could almost be real. The floor of the cab represents planked wood, and it's really nice to see that Ellis Clark Trains have got that kind of faded wood colour really quite well. If I very carefully rotate this, you'll also see that the underside of the cab roof is finished in a cream colour again, and I'm going to be saying that a lot through this review, just like the real locomotives. Looking down here, with the tender not attached, we can see the back of the locomotive with the tender drawbar, and this is just like the real thing, and that's how we will be attaching the two later on. And we've got our electrical connector as well, which is a really robust push fit, and it's actually quite easy to not just push together, but also to detach should you need to remove the tender from the locomotive in the future. Moving round to the other side of the locomotive, it's not just a mirror image of the other side. It's correctly got the wealth of different pipework. From the blower pipe, there's no lubricator on this side, but we do have an awful lot of copper pipework. And again, it's just a joy to look at. Everything that's on here, the more you look, the more there is to see. I'm beginning to understand why it comes bolted down to a plinth that has been specifically polished up to mean that you could put this, say, on your mantelpiece. This is a model that you will draw you in. You will not want to stop looking at this. It really is just so exquisite with the level of detail. Just taking a look at the wheels and the valve gear. Everything is exactly where it should be. We've got fluted coupling rods, and the correct joggling in the connecting rods. They're in two halves, just like the full-sized locomotives. We've got really nice representations of the oilers just on top of all the bearings. Correct number of spokes. And you can see here we've got this angled part just inside the rim where the spokes join to the tyre. The insides are finished in this nice sort of matte to satin black, and then the tyres themselves are blackened metal. I really like the counterweights on the wheels. You can see here they've got the correct pattern of rivets where the weights themselves would have been bolted in, and the different size for the centre drivers too. These are, of course, counterbalancing all of the motion, and that's why these can differ in size and position on different locomotives. The actual frame of the chassis, the detail just keeps on coming with all this extra rivet detail, and everything is exactly where it should be. I really like the sandboxes too. You can see the hopper at the top and the pipes going down behind the connecting rods, directing the sand stream to the wheels. We've got the perch bracket for the motion, and this just looks like it is the real casting that's on the full-sized Black 5. It really is exquisite. I've just noticed here this wealth of pipework for the injector. The detail on this is just absolutely incredible for a part that you wouldn't normally see much of. And then underneath the cab, we've got these cutaway open frames that give support to the footplate. Again, these could have easily just been a solid piece, but they're not. And that really is the watchword of the Ellis Clark Trains Black 5. It's just everything is done right. And I can imagine that that is Ellis Clark's watchword. We do it right, or we don't bother at all. And quite frankly, they've got it right. We've got the correct pattern of bolts on here. And I just love the subtlety of the fluting on this radius arm. It starts out wider and fluted, narrows up, and the fluting disappears just before it connects up here. The cross slide too is a nice heavy casting, and you can see it just looks perfect. One interesting thing about this model is that it features a UK-built gearbox, just like if you bought a very expensive handmade model. And one of the little party tricks of that is when you push it, the motion actually goes round. It doesn't use a worm gear, it's proper gearing, and that means that you can enjoy that valve gear even without having this on the layout. The cylinders, again, the shape is captured perfectly, with the slab sides that then give way to a complex curve around the top and a different radius of curve around the bottom. We have the twin red lines of lining, straight, true, and exactly where they need to be.
Does your home insurance cover your model railway collection? There can be certain conditions or limitations attached to your policy which could leave your collection uninsured or with very limited cover from all kinds of risks. For example, many home policies only provide very limited cover for contents kept in garages or other outbuildings, and some will only cover for collections up to a limited value. Magnet Insurance are here to help give you that peace of mind, making sure that you don't get caught out. Our specialist policies are flexible, and we can work with you to make sure that your collection is correctly covered and answer any questions that you have. Put your mind at ease by giving us a call on 01636 858 249 or visit our website for a quotation at www.modelrailwayinsurance.co.uk.
Turning now to the tender, this is the welded variety, but that doesn't mean any less detail. We've got the lining which follows the shape of the sides of the tender really quite nicely, with the red and the cream separated by the black band. It is straight and true and really does look crisp and sharp. In the centre we've got the late BR crest, and in O gauge you can really see a total wealth of detail, and Ellis Clark Trains have not skimped on this. The welded sided tender could have seemed very slab-sided, but Ellis Clark Trains have escaped that pitfall and certainly captured the look of the real tender perfectly well. The sides are quite flat, but up near the top you can see they start to curve in, just like on the prototype. And one thing I really want to show you, you can actually see the ribs are included that would have given strength to that curved over steel plate. We've got the correct, slightly sticking out running plate of the tender, and then underneath we've got the correctly spaced wheels with the axle boxes and the cutaway frame. There are access ladders at both ends, and again these include that non-slip on the treads that really does look amazing. The finish on this is second to none, and this feels like there's a lot of brass components that have gone into this tender. I'd actually wager that there's pretty much almost no plastic parts on this. This feels so much more like an exquisite museum piece made by a craftsman than a mass-produced item. It really is of the highest quality. Looking along the frames, I love the springs, and you can actually trace how the suspension works. It's not just a representation of it, you can see how the real suspension would work on these. I love the frames with their cutouts. Well, we've got this semicircle and flat across the bottom, and the correct pattern of rivets that leads to the correct strengtheners that run all the way across the bottom of the tender. We've even got these holes that are cut out to save weight. It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Looking on the back, the wealth of detail continues. On this tiny little bit of running plate as well, we've got a whole host of different tabs with their rivet detail. These would have been, I guess, to hold the tender tank onto the chassis frame. The vacuum standard is factory fitted, and then we've got the drawbar hook and the coupling, again, fully functional for the scale. We've got those sprung buffers again, very, very important in O-gauge. We've got these steps, and these feature the same non-slip tread pattern that we saw on the access ladders. And then we've got the lamp, and I really do like this domed out lens, just like the prototypes. These are exquisite. The fact that they work is an added bonus. Even if these had just been a purely scenic item, I would have been quite amazed at the quality of them. Then we've got additional overhead warning flashes, and then we've got the LMS build plate and works plate. Again, so nicely finished. And these, a separate etched piece that's been added. That's the level of attention to detail that they've gone to with these. The inside of the tender comes without any coal insert, which you might be used to in 00. Here, you just use real coal and build it up to whatever level that you choose. I actually much prefer this way because you can enjoy the wealth of detail inside with this coal chute and the correctly flared out tops with their additional bracing. Then we've got the coal chute, and this goes all the way back through into the coal hopper. If you fill this up with coal, it will come out here and spill out onto the footplate just like it would on the real locomotives. We've also got the patterns of rivets on the front and back baffles for the coal area. These aren't just flat arced pieces of metal, they've got extra detail all over them. Same for the back as well. And then on the back platform of the tender, we've got the dome, the breathers, and the water filling cap. All of these are correctly modelled as per the prototype. We've got that correct domed look to the dome itself, and they've captured the complex curve perfectly. Again, on the top of the platform, there's extra detail, ribs along the bottom, and I really like these lifting eyes at the back. More separately fitted parts with their bolt patterns around them. We've got separately fitted metal handrails at the back and at the front as well. The cab side of the tender, and again, so much extra detail. I'll start at the top. You can see these riveted parts, the flanges. We've got the lockers for tools, and presumably the crew's sandwiches would have gone in these. More overhead warning flashes. A spare lamp. Again, it's details like this that if it wasn't there, you just wouldn't think about it. But it's this level of attention to detail, a spare lamp to match those front and back. We've got the handbrake handles, separately applied and in white. And they've got this correct sort of bent outwards look about them. Again, I'm saying this a lot, just like the real thing. Further down, we've got this correct curved arched front. This is where the fall plate would rest. We've got the bump stops, and these are sprung loaded. These are not scenic items. These are fully functional, sprung loaded bump stops for between the locomotive and tender, and they will ensure that the pair ride well together. Close coupling, but always returning to the right position on the straight track. The rivet detail on here, again, exquisite. This feels like cast metal, matching all of the extra rivet detail up here. We've got the correct gap underneath. This is a multi-part, multi-piece fabricated tender, and it's just exquisite. The deeper you look, the more there is to see. The pipework is factory fitted, and this is quite flexible, so that when it's connected to the locomotive, it looks like we've got everything that should be connected between the two. And there we've got the other end of the electrical connection. Looking to the underside of the tender, again we've got the correct pattern tender wheels running in brass bearings, but then we've got all of the brake rigging, the stretchers, everything is in there, and we've even got the water scoop mechanism underneath. It's such a wealth of detail. Most of this you would never see when this is running, but it's there anyway because they could, because this is the definitive Black 5 locomotive in O gauge. It is quite literally perfect. When it comes to connecting tender and locomotive, first things first, use some of the packaging. There's plenty of foam, and this just protects your model. And this is where things get just a little bit trickier. I've got to connect together these two wires. I find it best to do this first. There is very limited space in here. Just line them up and then push them together. And you'll see the wires are now connected. It's best to do this before you do the drawbar, because if you wait until afterwards, there's much less space and it's far more difficult. Buried away underneath here is a screw. We just need to screw this all the way out, and that opens up the pin that the drawbar goes into. So I'm going to use this Allen key, and the reason for this is not for anything special other than because we've got it on its side, I need to lift up the drawbar and then slide these two carefully together. This is really quite fiddly, and I'll be honest with you, if there was one area that I would criticise, it's this mechanism. Prototypically, it's perfect, but practically, it's a real pain in the bottom to get these all lined up and then screwed together. What we're actually trying to do is get this screw through the eye of that drawbar. And then got these two pipes just lining up. So I've just been fitting the little pipes. They're very flexible and they go into two little eyelets, and they make all of the connections between the locomotive and the tender. And now we can roll this all back upright, and the tender and locomotive are now connected. When it came to running on the Garden Railway, the model performed really well. This particular one has the factory sound fitted suite, and that meant that we didn't have to bother with the DCC fitting. And I should say at this point that I didn't want to delve into the model because this is a loaner and I didn't want to break it. It is a very expensive loaner model after all. However, given the attention to detail that Ellis Clark has put into this model, I doubt that it would be difficult to DCC fit it with your own choice of decoder. On the straight and light curves, the model performed really well. It's quite heavy, and that meant that it had a really nice, smooth, rolling resistance on the track and hugged the track really quite well. That gearbox too gave a really smooth response, and with the setup on the sound decoder, it really was a pleasure and a joy to drive this locomotive on the Garden Railway. It was untaxed by the load that we gave it, which really was quite a small load, and I suspect that these will pull an absolutely enormous train if you wanted to tax them. When it says though that second radius, a set track, is the absolute limit of what this will get round out of the box, they're not joking. If you have any kinks in that track, as I found, you will find that the front bogie does pop off the track, and this isn't a gripe whatsoever. That is actually a really quite tight curve that prototypically these locomotives would never ever have gone anywhere near to. But on light curves, it really did perform exceptionally well. And if you have prototypical curves on your layout, then the extra detailing parts can be fitted and make this exquisite model even more exquisite, if that is indeed possible. We ran it up and down outside for about half an hour or so and had a great deal of fun. I really like the fact that the F2 key operates the braking function, and with a little bit of practice it was possible to actually really get some very lifelike performance out of this model. All in all, the running performance was really, really good. So really the only thing that I could fault was that the radius 2 curves is right on the limit, and that does limit it a little bit for anybody who maybe is pushed on space for an O-gauge layout. But I suppose I feel like I'm splitting hairs because this really is a superb model. So we turn now to the scores. First up is build quality, and really this model is absolutely second to none. There's such a thoughtful array of materials used in its construction, a lot of metal. There's die-cast and there's a lot of brass. In fact, I'd be hard-pressed to actually put my finger on anything on this model and say, oh, well, that's got to be plastic. There doesn't seem to be a lot of plastic at all. This is a museum-quality model, and it shows in every aspect of it. So really, there's only one score that this model could get, and that is 10 out of 10. On running quality, it performs incredibly smoothly thanks to that British-built motor and gear train. It really is quite magic as well to be able to push this model and see the valve gear in the wheels going round. Coming from double O-gauge models, I'm just so used to worm gears being used as part of the gearing reduction, but this gives a whole level of momentum to the model. The only area that I've criticised is that when they say minimum radius, second radius, it is right on the limit of what the locomotive can handle, and any even minor kinks in that track that would take it momentarily below that will result in the bogie popping off the track. All in all, it's a really, really good performer, and I'm going to give it 9.9. On DCC fitting and innovation, well, DCC fitting, this takes an industry standard decoder, and certainly there is plenty of space for it. The model comes factory fitted with a huge speaker which is facilitated in the locomotive to make sure that the sound suite sounds like it's coming from the locomotive and not from the tender. The performance on track showed that this model either has a built-in stay alive or just doesn't need it because it performed so well and so sure-footed on what is actually slightly tarnished and dirty outdoors track. The choice of materials that this model is built from are second to none. Everything about it is just so perfect. The only area where I could possibly level a criticism is the difficulty in connecting the tender to the locomotive, but for the average modeller you only have to do this once. And I do feel a little bit like a moany moaner because I'm not offering a solution to how they could have done it better. I understand exactly why they did it like that. It's prototypically completely accurate, but it is quite fiddly, and those who either have slightly poor eyesight or not quite so dexterous on their fingers might struggle to put these two together, and it's only a minor gripe. I'm going to give this a 9.9. On accuracy and quality of finish, well, there just isn't anything I can point to and say that's wrong. I'm not the biggest expert on Black 5s, but I know a man who is, and his name is Ellis Clark because he has put a lot of research into these, and I have such faith that this is the definitive O-Gauge Black 5. The actual paintwork on this is really sharp and crisp, and I like the small details, like the matte black on the smoke box. It's little touches like that that really do add a special something, and you can point to any part of this model and say, I like that, that's gone above and beyond. So I'm going to give this 10 out of 10. On value for money, the model retails DCC ready for £949.99 or with the factory sound for £1,175. Now, for those who are used to double O-gauge models, you might balk a little bit at the price. But let's stop there now and remember what this is. It's a mass-produced model, but it's been done to the standard of something that you would expect a master craftsman to produce for a museum. This is perfect, and actually, at the price that it's retailing at, you're getting yourself a blooming good bargain. There is not a kit builder on this planet that could make a kit to this standard, certainly not paint it and finish it like this, and to make it run as smoothly and like silk as this. There really is no bother, no worry, you just get it out of the box and you're up and running. And for that, the price is an absolute steal. So I'm going to give it 10 out of 10. And that gives a final score of 49.8. Can I recommend this model? Wholeheartedly. This is in another category for O-Gauge. It makes the models that you know and love seem like toys by comparison. If it sounds like I'm gushing, perhaps I am, but this model really is an absolute gem. Well, I hope you've really enjoyed today's video and found it informative, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below, especially if you're an O-Gauge modeler. Is this something that's on your radar? And what did you think about it, what you saw today? Does this bode well for the double O-Gauge War Department 210 from Clark Railworks as well, given that it will be being developed by the same design team that did this? Either way, we've got a link down below to take you to Ellis Clark Trains to find their wonderful Black 5, as well as all of their other models, including the Wickham rail trolleys, the Darstead coaches, and those press flow cements as well. And don't forget to hit that like button, share this video, and also subscribe to the channel to be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. You can also check out our full merch store down underneath the video and pick up your very own t-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more in a whole host of exclusive designs. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O-gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest loco.
Does your home insurance cover your model railway collection? There can be certain conditions or limitations attached to your policy which could leave your collection uninsured or with very limited cover from all kinds of risks. For example, many home policies only provide very limited cover for contents kept in garages or other outbuildings, and some will only cover for collections up to a limited value. Magnet Insurance are here to help give you that peace of mind, making sure that you don't get caught out. Our specialist policies are flexible, and we can work with you to make sure that your collection is correctly covered and answer any questions that you have. Put your mind at ease by giving us a call on 01636 858 249 or visit our website for a quotation at www.modelrailwayinsurance.co.uk.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/JenniferKirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.